I was asked to reflect this morning on the phrase, "The light in me sees the light in you." And to do that, I have to first start with some philosophy. So I hope all of you remember Descartes, who very famously said, "I think, therefore I am." Later on, he clarified that perhaps a better way of saying that would be, "I doubt, therefore I am." Because Descartes was saying that if we can contemplate ourselves, if we can doubt ourselves, that proves our existence, that we are who we are. But Descartes ties our identity, our self-identity, into our ability to think, to reason. It kind of ends up being a very inward-focused view of who we are. There is another, I won't say it's a competing philosophy, but it is a contrasting philosophy that comes out of Southern Africa called Ubuntu. I first came across this philosophy when I was reading Desmond Tutu's writings about his work with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in South Africa following apartheid. And Ubuntu says, "I am because you are." Essentially, it is society that makes us who we are. Without our commonality connection to one another, we are missing an essential part of our whole. We cannot be our whole selves without one another. In 2020, the African Journal of Social Work tried to define Ubuntu as an authentic individual human being is part of a larger and more significant relational, communal, societal, environmental, and spiritual world. So rather than the self being defined by my ability to reason, the self is defined by our interconnectedness with one another. And we come to the phrase I'm reflecting on today, "The light in me sees the light in you." And I think one of the ideas behind this is that our self-identity is tied into this idea that all of us share something in common. We may have outward differences, but at the core of our being, who we are, there is something shared by all things: light. Because you see, how we think about ourselves matters. That's why I started here with this conversation about how we think about ourselves. Because how we think about ourselves, especially how we think about ourselves in relationship to others, it matters. If I think of myself primarily through the lens of my ability to reason, to think, or even to doubt, I have very little need for any of you. If my primary lens for understanding who I am comes from what's going on in there, I have very little need for anyone else. But I also find that I create an identity that can be so fragile. I recognize more and more how limited my reasoning ability is. I recognize more and more how limited my intellect, my wisdom, my intelligence can be. But I also recognize how easy it is through injury or illness or simple age for the wisdom I have accumulated to simply slip out. And if I define who I am simply by what goes on in my brain, I realize how diminished I could become through no fault of my own. However, if I think of myself through the lens of society, or even through this lens that we all hold something in common together, that there is a universal element that ties us all together, then others matter just as much as I do. In fact, it means that if any one of you is diminished, I am also diminished. And if any one of you is elevated, I too am elevated. If we set our mindset in this way, not only do others matter, but others matter more than we could imagine. Perhaps the thought behind the phrase, "the light in me sees the light in you," reminds us that not only are we supposed to be part of a global community, but we are supposed to be part of a grand creation that is bigger than our dreams and more intimate than our imaginations. And I start here this morning because I want us to open our minds. I want us to open ourselves to thinking about ourselves bigger than we are. I was asked to reflect on the phrase, "the light in me sees the light in you," and while I had heard it before, I needed to do a little research. It's often associated with the word namaste. It is a traditional Hindu greeting that Stephen Phillips from Columbia University suggests may have originally meant something akin to salutations to the divine child in your heart. Holly Oxlander from Baylor University simplifies it a little more. She says that this Hindu greeting may have been understood as the sacred in me recognizes the sacred in you. And as I thought about this idea, that we share some commonality of divine light, some sacredness interwoven within us, I couldn't help but think of our faith tradition's talk of light. That our faith tradition uses light imagery a lot. First, before anything else, in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, light comes into a chaotic creation. Let there be light. I always found it kind of amusing that it takes like 3 more days for the sun to be created. Light just seems to exist at the beginning of time with no source. It permeates everything. The light of that first day of creation might better be understood as something that undergirds all of creation, something that is present everywhere at every moment throughout the entirety of creation. It is light that no darkness can overcome. As I was preparing for this, I was listening to something, it was probably something on NPR, talking about the sea life they find at the very bottom of the ocean, at a place where no light can penetrate. They are finding life processes happening that before we only thought were able to happen through the energy of the sun. That down in the very depths of the oceans, in complete darkness, there is life. And that makes me wonder about this light that undergirds creation. It's not the light we normally think about, not the shining bulbs that illuminate our sanctuary, not even the sun in the sky that warms us and so often provides us life. The light that undergirds creation isn't challenged by darkness or depths. The light that undergirds creation is something that is innate in everything. Skipping ahead to the Gospel of John, John, in his first few verses of his Gospel, parallels the Genesis creation story, except this time the light is imagined as a person named Jesus Christ. This primordial light that has run through all of creation has become incarnate in the personhood of Jesus, perhaps revealing to all of us that that divine light is still running through us as well. The idea of light is central in our faith. What I want to do right now is I want to look at light, not from the Orthodox Christian understanding, but rather through the lens of the Celtic Christian church. I often go to the Celtic Christians whenever I come up with a challenge in the natural world. They have done such a great job of incorporating the worldly aspect of our faith with the divine aspect of it. You can almost think of the Celtic Christian church as a court that has a dissenting opinion. We agree that the majority of Christians believe one thing, but here we are saying maybe it's this way. And the Celtic Christians have done that with the concept of light. You see, the earliest Christian theologians, championed by Augustine, created this dichotomy between things that were of God and things that were of the world. And those two did not mix very well. There was the city of God where things were perfect, and then there were the cities of the world where things were very imperfect. And those things did not meet. The city of God and the city of the world did not meet one another. And that thread has run throughout the Orthodox Christian tradition, that there is this separation between the Creator and the creation, that they don't very well mix together. The Celtic Christian church kind of threw all of that out. The Celtic Christians said that the divine and the human were linked to one another, unable to be understood apart from one another. Erigena, the Irish philosopher, pondered on the word theos. You know, that word that we say is called God. Theology, God words, theos, God. And Erigena says that maybe theos is better understood to mean one who runs. That is, one who is running through all things, through all of creation. All of creation has God running through it, like the lifeblood that is supporting a living organism. God's presence, God's light is running through everything. In Celtic teachings of the story of creation, the light of that very first day, the let there be light kind of light, is a thread interwoven through everything, holding all creation together. All life, all everything is rooted in that light. In this understanding, we are all bearers of God's beauty and splendor, because each one of us is carrying the light of creation through the mere fact that we exist in this world. But it also means that the light that is carried by you, the sacred light that you carry in the world, is also carried by your friends, by your family, by the beggar you drove by after getting your groceries this week, by the people we might name as enemy, by the plants outside, by even the little tiny air molecules we are breathing. All of it has the light of God running through of it. All of it has an innate sacredness to it. All things are sacred. It gives us all a common ground, that all of us have something in common with one another. But I think it also might convict us a little bit, especially when we don't treat one another with love, when we harm our environment, when we turn our eyes from those in need. Maybe at its core, this phrase, the light in me sees the light in you, at the core of this phrase, and maybe at the core of our Christian faith, we can find several interwoven truths. Truth one, we all come from the same place. The same things that make me up, make you up. In fact, if the scientists are right about how the universe is formed, then the things that make you up came from an exploding star. A supernova millions upon millions of years ago, billions of years ago, formed the very molecules that make you up, that make me up. We're all made of star stuff. Talk about light being within us. Talk about there being light formed into the very essence of our lives. So if you want to go the scientific route or you want to go the faith route, we all come from the same place. The same stuff makes all of us up. That's our first truth. Our second truth is that we carry something that is sacred through the mere fact that we exist. Not that we earn our sacredness, not that we earn God's light in us, but just the fact that we exist means that we have something sacred to us. I have to think about that every time I meet one of those people that just rubs me the wrong way. Somebody that just annoys me. Somebody that just constantly bugs me. I have to remember the same light, the same sacredness exists in that person. I don't know if I always deserve that sacredness, but it's there anyways. Truth number 3, when we harm others, when we deny humanity to others, when we treat others poorly, when we treat creation poorly, we are treating the sacred poorly. Call that whatever you will. I call it the divine. I call it God. I call it the Christ in us. When we harm others, when we deny humanity to others, when we treat creation poorly, we are treating the sacred poorly. Those are 3 interwoven truths that I find not only in this phrase, the light in me sees the light in you, but also in our Christian traditions. And I hope that as we go from this place, as we go out into the world, whether it be a bright, sunny, beautiful day or one of those kind of miserable, rainy days that we've been getting a lot lately, whatever it is, notice the light. Notice the light in your life. Notice the sacredness in your life. Notice it in the life of the person you're sitting next to in the pews this morning. Notice it in the trees outside, in the rocks underfoot. Notice it in everyone, in everything. Let's go from this place today to see an outpouring of light in the world. Amen.